Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Power resides not in the many, but in the one. Those who gather in packs, who clutch to companionship, are bound by their need for others. Weaknesses masked as strength, chains disguised as bonds. The lone wolf understands what the herd cannot, that true power comes from solitude, from the silence of the self. To stand alone is to shed the weight of others' fears, others' failures, and walk the path of greatness unburdened. The lone wolf does not seek comfort in numbers, for comfort is the opiate of the weak. In solitude, one finds clarity. The noise of the crowd dulls the senses, clouds the mind with distractions. But alone in the dark, one's vision sharpens, instincts come alive. The lone wolf moves unseen, unheard, cutting through the shadows like a blade through silk. There's no need to answer to another's call, no need to compromise strength for the sake of harmony. In solitude, the only voice that matters is your own. The only command, your own will. The lone wolf knows no betrayal, no false loyalty, for there are no oaths to be broken. Alliances are the foundation of weakness, built on the crumbling sand of promises that will one day collapse. Those who rely on others are left vulnerable, exposed. But in solitude there is only control, control of the mind, control of the body, control of every step and every strike. To be alone is to be free, to wield a power that cannot be divided or diluted. Those who stand together fall together, but the lone wolf endures. There is strength in the silence of isolation, a strength that the pack cannot comprehend. The herd fears the quiet because it cannot survive without the constant chorus of others. But the lone wolf thrives in the stillness, feeding off the solitude, growing sharper with each passing moment. While the crowd falters in the unknown, the wolf adapts, evolves, becomes something greater than any single beast. The lone wolf does not share its power. It consumes, it dominates, it outlasts. And when the dust settles, it is the lone wolf who stands unbroken, watching as the herd scatters to the winds. Victory belongs to the one who needs nothing. To walk alone is to own every victory, to claim every triumph as your own. There is no need to share the spoils, no need to bow to another's will. The lone wolf takes what it desires because it answers to no master. The pack is driven by fear, fear of the unknown, fear of abandonment. But the lone wolf knows that fear is an illusion. In solitude, there is nothing left to lose. When you walk alone, the only battle you fight is the one within. And when that is won, no force outside can stand against you. The lone wolf is patient, a master of the long game. While the pack rushes headlong into chaos, driven by the urgency of numbers, the lone wolf waits, calculating, choosing the perfect moment to strike. Each step is deliberate, each decision is its own. The wolf knows that power is not in the rush to victory, but in the cold, quiet endurance that outlasts the storm. Time is the lone wolf's greatest ally. For while others grow weary, the wolf remains vigilant, its hunger sharpened by solitude. There is a primal beauty in walking alone. To rely on none, to answer to none, to rise and fall by your own hand. This is the essence of true power. The lone wolf does not seek recognition, does not crave the approval of the pack. Its power lies in its independence, in the knowledge that its strength is pure, untouched by the weaknesses of others. While the herd cries for validation, the lone wolf moves in silence, invisible, unstoppable. The world fears what it cannot control, and nothing is more feared than the one who walks alone. Solitude is not a curse, it is a weapon, To be alone is to be unchained, to wield power that is entirely your own. Those who cling to the pack are doomed to fall, weighed down by the burdens of others. But the lone wolf rises unencumbered, untethered by the frailties of the many. In the end, when all is said and done, the last howl that echoes through the night will not be that of the crowd. It will be the lone wolf standing victorious, having conquered all without ever needing another. Inner conflict is born from weakness, a fracture between desire and fear, ambition and doubt. It festers in the heart of those who cling to the illusions of safety, who tie their fate to the will of others. The war within is fueled by these chains of expectation, of obligation, of compromise. When one relies on others, the self is divided, torn between serving the needs of the herd and pursuing the hunger of the soul. It is this conflict that weakens the spirit, that tears at the mind until it is bound by indecision and hesitation. But solitude strips away these false bonds. In isolation, there is no one to serve but the self, no expectations to weigh you down. The inner conflict that once raged in the presence of others falls silent, the noise of the crowd fading into oblivion. Solitude reveals the battlefield for what it truly is, a space where one's darkest impulses meet clarity, where doubt is a shadow to be consumed. Alone, you are free to confront every fear, every weakness, without the distraction of another's influence. In this silence, the war within ceases to be a struggle, it becomes a refinement. The fuel of inner conflict is fear, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being cast aside by those you once depended on. But in solitude, these fears lose their power. There is no one to disappoint, no one to betray, no one to stand in your way. The fear that once drove conflict becomes a tool to be wielded, a source of strength instead of division. The lone wolf confronts fear not by fleeing from it, but by mastering it, turning it into a flame that fuels the fire of ambition, the hunger for power. When you walk alone, the path becomes clear. There's no need to navigate the tangled web of loyalties, no need to balance your needs with the whims of others. In solitude, the goal is singular, undistracted. The focus becomes absolute, unyielding. The inner conflict that plagued the mind in the presence of others is burned away by the clarity of purpose. The lone wolf is not torn by indecision, for every choice is its own, every consequence is its to bear. With no one to answer to but the self, victory becomes inevitable, a natural progression of a mind unburdened. Solitude is the forge where conflict is transformed into strength. The doubts that once gnawed at the edges of the mind become insignificant. The weaknesses that once divided the spirit are burned away. In the silence of solitude, you become the master of your inner world, bending every thought, every impulse to your will. Without the noise of others, without the weight of external judgment, you find the power to transcend the war within, to emerge from the chaos as something stronger, something unbreakable. Victory does not come from the absence of conflict. It comes from its mastery. And in solitude, there is nothing to distract from that mastery. No voices to lead you astray, no false comforts to dull your edge. The lone wolf understands that the path to victory lies not in avoiding the conflict within, but in embracing it, using it as a stepping stone to something greater. In solitude, the mind sharpens like a blade, cutting through every obstacle with ruthless precision. Every battle fought within is a victory claimed in the world beyond. The war within becomes a tool, not a hindrance. In solitude, conflict becomes the crucible of transformation, the fire that purifies the self and prepares it for conquest. Every doubt is confronted and conquered, every fear dissected and understood. What once fueled division now fuels ambition, a hunger that grows stronger with each moment of isolation. In solitude, the lone wolf becomes more than a warrior. It becomes a force of nature, a being whose victory is written not by the strength of numbers, but by the strength of will. And when victory comes, as it always does for those who master the war within, it is absolute. It is not shared, not diluted by the needs or contributions of others. It is a triumph born from the purest source of power, the self. Solitude leads to victory because it strips away everything that weakens, everything that divides. In solitude, you become whole, unbreakable, a creature of singular purpose and relentless ambition. And when you stand atop the ashes of your enemies, it is not their defeat that defines you, but your mastery over yourself, your conquest of the shadows within. Without solitude, greatness is an illusion. No monumental work has ever been crafted in the company of others, for the noise of the herd suffocates the brilliance that lies in silence. To create something truly formidable requires the isolation of the mind, the narrowing of focus that only solitude can provide. When surrounded by the many, the self is diluted, each thought fragmented, each inspiration tainted by the influence of lesser minds. But in solitude, there is no such pollution. There is only the purity of one's vision, the raw potential that thrives in the absence of distraction. The greatest works are born in the darkness of isolation, forged in the quiet agony of the self. It is in these moments, when there is no voice but your own, that creation becomes something more than mere effort. It becomes an act of will. Without solitude, the mind is too easily swayed, too easily led astray by the whispers of the unworthy. But alone, the mind sharpens, narrows its focus until every thought, every stroke of effort is infused with purpose. Greatness demands this sacrifice. The severing of all ties, the rejection of the distractions that seek to devour the soul's ambition. Solitude strips away the unnecessary, exposing the core of what must be done. The greatest works of art, the most magnificent achievements, were not birthed in the comfort of companionship. They emerged from the silent struggle, the endless toil in the shadows, where the Creator fought not with others, but with the limitations of the self. In these moments of profound isolation, the Creator breaks the chains that bind lesser minds and rises to a place of unparalleled mastery. Solitude is not just a condition. It is the price of brilliance. Without solitude, there is only mediocrity. The herd seeks comfort, seeks validation. But these are the enemies of greatness. To rise above, to create something that endures the test of time, one must abandon the safety of the many and walk alone. It is in this aloneness that the soul finds its strength, that the mind uncovers its deepest reserves of power. No great work was ever born from a place of ease or comfort. It is in solitude, in the cold, unyielding embrace of isolation, that the self is forced to reach beyond its limits, to stretch towards something higher, something magnificent. Greatness does not tolerate distractions. It requires a singular focus, a relentless pursuit of perfection. This pursuit can only be sustained in the stillness of solitude, where there is no noise, no interruption. In the quiet, the mind expands, thoughts flow without obstruction, and the work begins to take shape. not as a mere task, but as a reflection of the Creator's will. Without solitude, the work is diluted, weakened by the pull of external influence, by the desires and needs of others who do not understand the weight of creation. Solitude is not just the absence of others. It is the presence of the self, the full, unrelenting confrontation with one's potential. Only in this silence can the mind dive deep enough to discover the seeds of greatness. It is in solitude that the work becomes more than effort. It becomes a manifestation of power, a testament to the strength of will that can only be achieved when the world is shut out. There is no space for greatness in the company of others, no room for brilliance where compromise lingers. Without solitude, the mind remains tethered, bound by the limits imposed by those who lack the vision to see beyond the ordinary. It survives by its own strength, kills by its own hand, and roams the world without a master. Solitude is the natural state of the beast, for it answers to no one, bows to nothing. It is a creature of pure power, driven by hunger and instinct, untamed by the softness that binds the weak to one another. In solitude, the beast thrives, unchallenged, unstoppable.